Welcome to this ESRA short movie on user interface, user experience testing, UI UX. My name is Barry Schouten. We're going to focus on new data collections, sometimes called smart surveys. In particular, we're going to look at a household budget survey implemented in an app. I'm going to do this with Statistics Netherlands Userlab methodologists Deirdre Giesen and Vivian Meertens. But let us first look at what that app would look like. So the household budget survey app has two data entry options. One is manual, this is the traditional way you could say, and it has a scanning option. So here you see a recording of the manual data entry. The respondent has to click on a particular day and he or she can add a purchase. So usually a purchase consists of multiple items, and then per item he or she would have to type it in. And when typing, the name of that product is matched against a database of known texts from historic data. If the respondent feels that one of these products is close enough, then he or she can click it and it's selected. At that point, the price still needs to be entered. If the respondent cannot find the product in the database, then he or she can type a new one, and this will then be entered in the database. So you can see from here, this is going pretty fast, that it takes quite a bit of time because each individual product has to be submitted and selected. So the second option that is installed in this app is to scan a paper receipt. And of course it can be done in multiple ways. The simple way would be that the scan is then submitted and that's it. But it's more interesting if the respondent can also see what's going on and, if needed, edit or revise the texts that are extracted. So there's a real-time optical character recognition installed that attempts to understand what's on the receipt. So here you can see how it goes. Respondent is selecting the scan option. The receipt is scanned. The respondent can then choose to crop the image. This is of course done to make it easier to find the products, but it is also for privacy reasons, so the respondent can sort of remove information that is not relevant to us but that could be privacy sensitive. The receipt is then OCR'd real time and the respondent can add it if needed. So we're going to test this app, but let us first talk to the two experts. This ESRA short movie on user experience, user interface. I have two colleagues, two senior survey methodologists, Deirdre Giesen and Vivian Meertens here with me. So welcome to this session.
Thank you. Thank you.
In a moment, we're going to look at some of the work you're doing in the lab at Statistics Netherlands. But I'm also very curious a little bit about the past. So can you say a bit more about how did the lab started and what you're doing in the lab?
Okay, yes. So the Question Lab started in 1992 at Statistics Netherlands, and then it was called the Questionnaire Design Resource Center. And it was then primarily or only focused on household surveys. After a couple of years, we have extended the scope to business surveys as well. And the main goal of what we are doing with the Question Lab was and still is to identify problems in the response process and to understand what causes measurement errors and response burden, and well, if it happens, why it happens, and how we can fix it so we can improve our data collection. And it's what is special about the Question Lab, I think, is that it was and still is mainly qualitative research. So that is special for statistical office, and that was new at the time. And now it has become an accepted best practice, I think, internationally in questionnaire development, and not only questionnaires, because now we have all kind of different tools to collect data.
So let's say today, what would be the key elements in testing?
Nowadays, we have much more self-administered data collection. So that is why we nowadays call ourselves the Userlab and not the Question Lab anymore, because a lot of usability has
so to say. You can say there is a switch from classical cognitive interviewing, where you would like to evaluate the question and answer process. But because of developments of filling in questionnaires on different devices, for instance, then the interaction between the device and the questionnaire text is very useful to see and to look, to observe actually how a respondent interacts with that. And I think that is necessary to give a good information of possible measurement errors.
So when you started, I think you're both in the lab for maybe 20 years or more, or something like that.
Yeah.
Was it already online questionnaires, or was it predominantly more paper or
Interviewer based mainly. So then there was,
Yes.
for the household service, only interviewer based. Of course, for the business surveys, it was paper, self-administered.
Yes.
And then we switched to the KAWI.
And then the mixed methods actually. Then we saw also differences between KAWI and interviewer based questionnaires. So for instance, using instruction text, there we had some focus on also in the lab. We did some experience with that, whether you use a question mark, for instance, or information button. That's actually also sort of UX question. Yeah.
So it has diversified a lot over time, more options, more screen sizes, more
absolutely more
modes,
more devices. Nowadays with the apps, we've also done some testing on data collection with different types, like these the meters where people have to
the
sensors where people measure how much they move around, and the home sensor where people have collect information on the quality of the air. We did some experimenting with that, and of course there you also have to test if people understand what we ask of them and if they are willing and able to provide that information, because that's basically what we do, but in a different context now than 20 years ago. But still, that's what we want to know. Do they understand what we ask of them? Are they willing to do that, and are they able to do that?
And are they able? Yeah.
And if not, how can we fix that?
Yeah.
Let's get back to this basic principle. So how do you prepare? What are the steps that you would normally go through if you do a lab test or some form of testing?
Therefore, we have a scheme. As you can see here, we make it kind of visible how the steps that we take in a test project. On the left side, you can see the steps that we usually do in a test project. So if there are research question or proposal to evaluate or to test some questionnaire, then we do an intake and we write a proposal with research question actually to look up what the research questions are, whether there are some because of a review or other questions of people who are involved, whether it is needed to do an evaluation with test respondents. And if we have some key elements of what we are looking for, we would like to write a plan, a decent plan and a protocol. I think that is an essential step in doing a test project, that we have at the front very obvious research directions. So sometimes we have questions with variant. So if there is a question and answer options, there is a lot of discussion about, and then they have two variant question types we can do in the test, for instance. And then this also gives some input for the probes. So what would we like to evaluate with meta questions? And also it gives some information what kind of subpopulation we would like to invite as test respondents. And all those elements are written down in the test plan and the protocol. So for instance, if you would like to recruit youngsters, if it is a specific survey topic on youngsters, or if we would like to, in the past, we did a lot of research on the labor force survey, and then we needed people with who are looking for a job or who are unemployed. And after that, then the step of actually conducting the test interviews, we do that in the lab. And therefore, we make a separate column about the several steps that we are doing there. And I think it is good to look at it, as we also did it in the video that is sending also about the budget app. So first of all, we make appointments with test respondents, and they are coming to our office at CBS, and they are at the entrance. And then we took them to the lab, and that is actually where we are sitting now, this room. And we give some introduction of the goal and what is needed to do for interviewer and also the respondent. And we explain the role of the observer and all the equipment that we have here. And an important aspect is then to ask permission, of course, because we do a lot of recording. We would like to see it actually what is happening, and also to show the recordings to the expert reviews who are involved in the test project, so they can actually see what the test respondent experiences when filling in a questionnaire or using an app. And after conducting the interview, we thank the respondent, and usually he gets a gift card, and as a thanks. And we bring him back to the entrance. So that is, in a nutshell, the steps we are taking in the test interviews. And also we demonstrate the colleagues who are involved. So colleagues of the statistical department. There is always a test leader from a Userlab, mostly Deirdre, or I am that. And then we took other colleagues into it. And I think it is good to mention that we have a lot of experience with cognitive interviewing, or also other types of giving a good a rapport with the respondent, that it is a nice atmosphere to get most information what is necessary to conduct the test appropriately. And also, of course, we ask questionnaire designers sometimes to observe, and also statistical department colleagues, and they actually can see what is happening with their questions or questionnaire. And of course, all the facilities and equipment, it would never be working without the support of the IT colleagues. We are very glad with. And then also some in the steps, we see some documents that we use and that are very important also to, so because of the Data Protection Act, privacy aspects, that we have good documentation of every step. And of course, we make a report from each test interview. So that is the process that we actually do. For most of our tests, it looks like this, and sometimes there are some nuances depending on the research question.
This is pretty heavy kind of testing, and it's probably needed in some circumstances. Do you also sort of distinguish between sort of light versions of testing, more heavy versions? For example, the number of test persons will be larger in certain settings and so on?
So every test is different depending on the goals of the tests, and of course depending on the time and the resources. So yeah, if needed, we can improvise, and we can do some more informal testing. For example, ask a couple of colleagues to try out a questionnaire and provide us with feedback, or test with family members where we can easily have access to. But of course, these can still provide valuable insights, but it is better if the time allows to test with people from outside. Well, depending on the phase also in the data collection that development that you are, because planning a new data collection or a redesign of a data collection, it's an iterative process. And depending on where you are in this process, you will use different tools. For example, if we develop something completely new with a completely new approach strategy, we may first do some in-depth interviews with people. Like when we started to do interviews in nursing homes, we talked to people managers in nursing homes about the ideas that we had about how to approach them. If that would be feasible, you might want to do focus group interviews with experts in the fields, and this cognitive interviewing comes in once you have at least draft questions or a draft letter. You have something that people can interact with, and so it depends on that also. It's
well, later we will talk about this new app that you've been testing. This sort of definitely is something very new. But maybe it's before we do that, would you say that testing as we do it in the Netherlands is similar to what other countries or other institutes are doing, or are some countries doing more or less, or do you have some idea of that?
Well, if you think about in the European context and in the European statistical system, it is kind of, how do you say, it is not obliged, but it's very necessary that each statistical office does some testing with new materials, new survey questions. And as far as we know that, for instance, DStatis, statistics office in Germany, has the same kind of facilities and the same kind of processes when it comes to testing questionnaires. We are located at the methodology department, and other NSIs, for instance, have it more organized closely to a questionnaire development department or also to the field interviewers. But how it is arranged, it is mostly located as a pre-test, so before that the questionnaire is fielded, and sometimes also it is incorporated in the evaluation process step, that questionnaires are more evaluated with interviewings, for instance, and that might be a reason to, if there are some issues, to do a test with test respondents. So a difference, but in general, all NSIs need to some kind of testing in a user lab or questionnaire lab.
Yeah, they may do it. They may do it at the respondents' homes, for example, or via Zoom or video conferencing, or via telephone interviews. And we have, in fact, several Eurostat projects where we worked together with NSIs from other European institutes to do coordinated testing, which is really nice if that's possible.
Yeah, it was actually for the budget app also.
Also, and it's very interesting, and that we always find similar issues. Of course, you have country-specific things, but surprisingly many similarities in what we find in different countries.
That's good news, because we need these kind of things to be comparable across countries. So if you find the same issues, that's good news, I guess, in a way. So you've been talking about we have different modes, we have different devices nowadays. So in the test that we will see the apps on a smartphone, small device. But I guess nowadays, if you do testing, it could be also still laptops or tablets or anything. Does that influence how you do testing? Would you sort of test all of these devices simultaneously, or would you focus on certain devices? Or
well, in preparation, we try to give some information at the beginning of the respondents, which device they are bringing, for instance, like which mobile phone type. But of course, we have also equipment in the lab, and it is not always feasible to give good information about a good representation of all the possible devices, of course, because also developments go very fast. But we keep it in mind to have some information of different types of device.
And whether we do test in all modes, and of course, ideally you would test something in all modes and on all main types of devices. But of course, with budget and time being limited, we make a risk assessment how we want to use the different modes and where we want to focus. So typically our tests are small. You must think about like 10, 15 test respondents. So then you are limited in how many types of devices you can use. And if we have no reason, if for example, we are introducing a new mode we would maybe focus more on that new mode.
But maybe some 20 or even 15 years ago, the interviewer mode was still the dominant mode. So telephone, face to face. We gradually shifted to other modes, more self-administered. Does it mean that, for example, you would also sort of listen to interviewers, what they encounter in the field, because they now sort of have questionnaires that must be multi-mode, right? So
yeah, well, like I said earlier, the questionnaire development, it's an iterative process, and it doesn't stop when the questionnaire is fielded, right? Like listening to what interviewers bring back is very important, and also comments from respondents in questionnaires or when they call our information service with complaints. So there are all kinds of sources once questionnaires are fielded that we can also use, because typically, of course, for NSIs, we don't do one-time surveys, right? We keep having the same type of surveys in the field every year, so we can learn from what's happening in the field and use that to improve it for a next wave.
Well, let's go to this example of the household budget survey app. When that project started, there was a bit, uncertainty about how much instruction would a respondent need. Can he or she do it self, learn how to use it, her or himself? Would the interviewer be needed to do some bit of helping, all that? There was a discussion at the point when these apps were launched. So if you would look at it as a sort of like a mode, would you say, well, that has a lot of elements that are really new and that really need thorough testing? Well, let us first go to the test. We have a test person, Ryan Bland, willing to help us out here. Let us see how the test goes.
My colleague Deirdre.
Hello, good morning.
Good morning.
I'm Deirdre Giesen.
I'm Ryan.
Thank you for being here.
Of course.
You can put your jacket on the.
Okay, please take a seat. So thank you very much that you're willing to help us with this test. I have a list with all kinds of topics I need to discuss, so sometimes I will check my list. And first I want to explain you a bit about the purpose of this test, what we're going to do, and then we will do the test. But as you may know, Statistics Netherlands is the government agency that produces official statistics. We conduct a lot of surveys, and one of the surveys that we do is the expenditure survey. And now my colleagues are developing a new way to collect the data. And always when we develop new questionnaires, we do small-scale tests like this one to see if people understand the questions they've written and how the tooling works. Because from behind our desks, we cannot think up everything that users will encounter.
Yeah.
So the reason that we're doing the tests is that we will get feedback about how well it works, what can be improved, what people like, what people don't like. And what we are testing today, it's still under development. So, for example, not everything is in English already, and the manual is also under construction, but it's important to get some feedback now so that we know what we should tweak.
During the test interview, Vivian Meertens is in the observation room. The tests are usually done with two persons, one in the Userlab with the test person assisting if needed, and the other in the observation room. So in the observation room, the recordings are coming in. It's possible to observe what's going on during the test interview without making it too uncomfortable for the test person. So it would allow for some other observations besides the direct contact with the test person. And the observation room is next door to the Userlab. So we're now moving to the Userlab. This is the Statistics Netherlands office. And in the room next door, the interview is currently taking place.
Yeah. Could you start with entering expenses from one of your receipts.
Also on the day that I actually purchased it, or just like for today? Or?
Maybe for today, yeah.
Okay.
And if you see anything that you find surprising or strange or nice, please let us know.
Yeah, I didn't expect, because there's 2 add buttons, and yeah, I didn't notice that they were like different symbols. So I guess this is to take a picture of my receipt.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I see that. So you were you noticed that there are 2 add buttons with different symbols.
Yeah, and it wasn't really clear that there's just like, because I guess, yeah, this you can enter it manually, and then the other one you just take a picture of the receipt.
Okay.
So I didn't realize that they would do different things.
Thank you. This is important information for us, that things that people are surprised by, then they are not clear enough.
Yeah, it's just a little bit weird to have 2 buttons with the same text that do different things.
So what you're doing now?
Yeah, I guess scanning the receipt.
How do you, why do you think it didn't scan it well?
Well, it seems like the items are listed like here on the top, like it's saying that the address is an item or something, and like these columns on the receipts are an item. Yeah, and then the amount is wrong.
Yeah. What would you do at home if you were participating in this survey and you would see something like this?
Just cancel it. Try to add it manually.
Maybe you can just enter like 2 items or something like that to see how that goes. Thank you. Let me check my list. I think we have a picture of what are the biggest problems for now already with the app, where we have to focus on to develop it further. If you look at the app on the main screen maybe, and the functionalities that you have seen so far, what is your impression?
Yeah, like it looks nice, and I think like if I really wanted to understand my budget, like track my expenditures, like it would also, you know, just for like myself to make sure that I'm staying within my budget, it seems like it would give a pretty nice like overview of everything.
Let's get back to our experts. Is this a tool that requires thorough testing?
Definitely, yeah.
But what makes it so different in your opinion?
Because installing an app to give information of your spendings is something that is not natural for a respondent to do that, because it is quite something new. And also the instruction that we developed, that is what we see. We develop something at the desk, and there are all the good ideas about it, but if you see it actually with a user, then sometimes we are so surprised what's happening that we could not imagine before that it would happen, but it happens. You can see struggling, and so you need to take the respondent with their hand and make the steps more easy understandable. But that is the challenge, because then you need a lot of text or a lot of information, and we also know that not people would like to read it. So, and it is not that obvious for respondent what's in for me, why should I do it? So all these elements we saw, and then it is our challenge to how can we motivate, and then the testing is a very useful thing to do because it is only with a couple of people and not in a field where it is more expensive to do. So it is a good first step, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I noticed that the test person sort of started right away. It seemed like he was not, well, he thought he could figure it out himself, but that was not exactly true. Is that a finding that you have more often, that people just, they go and then, or is that?
Yeah. Very typical. You may have a very nice leaflet, they take it out of the envelope or they leave it in the envelope, they put it aside and they start. Still nice to have some backup information, but they need it where they are, the information, in the app for each step. And and this app, of course, there were so many new elements, like having an app at all for data collection. It's not a questionnaire, so it's new concept, new idea. And then making pictures of your receipts. Are they willing to do that? Do they even understand what we are asking from them? Why we are asking this? What we need? This was not, we didn't show this in the video, but also questions, are people concerned about their privacy, for example, when they take pictures of receipts? So that was all something completely new for this specific app.
I also get the impression that respondents, or let's say test persons, they might expect very high performance or something. A tool like this should be perfect. It should do exactly what you think it should do. But it's, of course, it has its imperfections, which can be partly due to the respondent doing a poor job, for example. But how to handle this? Would that mean on the fly instructions or some sort of pop-up messages, or do you have any idea how we can sort of find the balance between not giving enormous amounts of instructions, but also not leaving the person sort of figure it out him or herself?
A good onboarding, which was not developed yet when with the app that we tested, would help. But not too long, of course, because then people might not want to do it anymore.
Yeah, and maybe use more the symbols or the icons, and also think about the output requirements. I guess that sometimes this is putting into the app, like the recordings of the groceries types, etc. Maybe if you could type a higher level higher to give information, that would also help. But these are fundamental changes also in the way we collect data for budget app. So that is more fundamental thing, because if we make it easier for the respondent, then he gives less information actually, or we have to work harder at the statistical office. But that is the trade-off, I would guess.
Yeah, I remember in this particular app that when taking a photograph, it sort of started to give signals, the quality is not good enough, the lighting is too weak, or something like that. Would that be something, sort of a direct response that's helpful?
Just give the information where they can use it, but also at a place where they see it, because in this particular test, it was very clear that the respondent, we had instruction about that only certain items on the receipt should be selected on the photograph, but he never saw it. His eyes were never there. He was just focused on that
the task to make it.
So you can have nice instruction, but if it's not into the reach of their eyes, it's useless.
Okay, but a project like this is still, of course, it's in development. It really is new for us. But, well, we've seen one test person, but how in general would you then start analyzing these kind of tests? So let's say you have 5 or 10 persons doing this, you make all these recordings. How do you start?
Well, first of all, if we develop the test project, we make an Excel, so that for each test respondent, we can fill it in. And at forehand, we use then for the budget app, for instance, the screen. So each screen is evaluated, and then we are filling in a report for each test respondent. And after a couple of respondents or the same sample, up to 10 or even 20, we fill it together. But maybe we can share the document so you can see it. This is an example of a model questionnaire from Eurostat for the ICT survey, but I think it gives a good impression of how we make the reports. So at the left, I will scroll a little bit. You can see, so it was the model question for the ICT, and then you see actually here the survey questions. And this is for test respondent 1. And here also the probes or the meta questions, which were developed together with other colleagues of other NSIs, and were asked in the test questionnaire for each test respondent. And so then they gave some reactions that is modeled here, like the issues. And after that, if we go to the combined file, then we saw over all the test respondents, we saw types of issues. We are sometimes the same or specific for one test respondent. And then we have to make, we have to discuss it in the test group, and also to make a judgment whether it is a severe issue or whether it is just for that one case. And then we have also the conclusions, or to give some recommendations how we would adapt the question or the question text, or maybe the answer options. But in this specific project, we did this in an international coordination. So that is kind of how we can report for each test respondent and also put it together. Also, Deirdre, would you like to add something?
Yeah, it differs per project how we exactly design these reporting templates. But yeah, I think it is important to have a reporting template on the individual level, and an iterative process for analyzing, summarizing, and analyzing with the testing team involved, so that so we always have multiple people interviewing, multiple people observing, so we have more objectivity and different heads in the process. And that we can. What is nice about these templates is that we can easily compare over questions and over persons, and so it's easier to find your data, the data that you collected in your interviews.
So in these templates, do you also sort of record some background of the person that was tested? So maybe things like maybe the literacy or the language fluency or these kind of stuff. Is that important?
It depends on the project.
Depends,
but typically we would register like age, gender, educational level, if they are native speakers or not native speakers, if they have like any dyslexia, for example, or the kind of device, very important nowadays, which device, if they are testing on their own device, are they using, and not just a device, but also which operating system. Sometimes we had problems and we didn't know why do we see it on this device and not on the other device. So it's good to know exactly on what device you are testing.
Yeah, we had some examples that there were differences between Android and iOS, for instance. So that was very good to know.
So you need that, and also of course who was the interviewer and was the observer, so we can easily find background information on the test. And also what we always try to do is make a good distinguishment in what we see happening in the test. So what do people say? What do we see that they are doing? For example, they may look surprised, or they may look embarrassed, for example. Those are important things to notice. And then separately note our interpretation of this and our ideas, so that we can always make sure, is this something that happened in the test, or is this an idea that we had when we were testing or looking at what was happening.
So this is a lot of information maybe per question or per series of questions. Do you also have some sort of overall summary, maybe even in terms of a green or orange or red light, something like, well, here we really need to go back to the design stage, or here it's good to go, or do you make some sort of general recommendation?
Yes, actually, here you can see this on the right. There are the suggestions, and of course, we sometimes code aspects that were mentioned. And if there are, for instance, if you have 10 respondents and 8 of them are going on a question like they do not understand the concept, then of course that is a good direction to see that there needs some adaptations. But sometimes we use also kind of how do you say, orange and green and red. And also it depends on what Deirdre were mentioning, whether there are serious possibilities to adapt things, or that it is related to the type of respondents that we had, or even that we did not had in the lab. So then we could advise to do it in a pilot, so to variations of questions, or look closer at it together with interviewers, for example. So it is not that we have, or each question, a direction for adaptation. It depends, so to say. Yeah.
It also
Could
it
it go,
depends. Sorry.
could it go as far as saying that the output that is sort of required is just a bridge too far? You know, the concepts are just too complex for the average respondent?
Well, sometimes we have that experience. For instance, for the ICT, they had a concept question on to measure the speed of the internet at home. And that was kind of an example that every respondent said, well, I don't know, my husband knows maybe, or I don't know, I am not technical. So people actually could not give an answer. And then you should say, maybe we recommend that to skip the question. Sometimes we did that, but together in an international coordination. So we are not the only NSI. Mostly if we do it together, it is a more stronger argument, as the results are in each country the same. So then you could say maybe it's better to skip.
I guess a lab test is a lab test. It's a bit unusual for a person to be in a setting where he or she is observed. So would you say for some aspects of the questionnaire, it's lab test is really very strong, very powerful, but there are also blind spots that would be very hard to see in lab test environment?
Yeah, but I would draw it a bit larger, because lab tests, the cognitive testing, it's not always in the lab, right? We can do it via Zoom, we can do it at respondent's home or at a business location, but still it is an artificial situation, and it is qualitative, small scale research. So this has its pros and cons. And I think the big win of this type of testing is that we can get an in-depth understanding. You can do spontaneous follow-up questions. When you see something happen, you can build a bit of rapport with the respondents. That's why they will be more willing, hopefully, to share their ideas. But also, you can ask additional questions. You can really go into the depths of why things are happening, and I think that provides you with really valuable insights in how people interpret our questions, how they process it, how they respond to it, why they may not be willing to answer the question or are not able to answer it. And it identifies hidden problems, because of course maybe AI can do this for us at some point in time, but you only if you ask people to, well, can you tell me a bit more about why you answered this question, or can you give me examples? And also based on what you know of them already from what they told before, then you can find out that they give, well, a wrong answer, wrong in the sense that they are not answering the question that we intended to ask, or are not giving the answer that we wanted to have. And so these kind of hidden problems, maybe respondents, they can really easily answer a question. The interviewer can really easily write down the answer and no problems visible, but only when you elaborate on that, you will see that they miss something important. And it is a very flexible way to get feedback. You can do it quickly and relatively cheap compared to field experiments, for example, of large pilots. But of course, it is limited in generalizability. You do small-scale testing, so you cannot quantify your findings. So if you doing some important changes on a very important questionnaire, small-scale testing is very nice to develop this questionnaire. But then, if you really want to know how it affects your data, you need to do an experiment with a parallel run. And of course, the subjectivity is also always a challenge with qualitative research. So you must make sure that you bring in as much as objectivity as possible.
Is that possible? You talk about rapport, so sort of get a connection to the test person. We are also certain persons, and subjectivity. And do you think that's always easy, or is it sometimes complicated to get the rapport?
Well, it depends, of course, and not always people do know what they can expect it. So sometimes they think they have to do an examen, and that is, of course, not the atmosphere that you would like. So if you have good instructions, and I think we have some experience that we give the good instructions, and that we give the feeling that respondents, that everything they mention is worthwhile to mention. And of course, respondents different. Sometimes they are able to talk more easily. Sometimes you need to give more techniques to stimulate that. But of course, it depends. But I think in general, because also the people who are willing to do the test, respondents mostly evaluated at the end. Well, I find it very interesting, and I was glad to help you, and I would like to do it another time. So I think that it is,
Yeah, I have a few more questions about the future of testing, because I was attending a lecture not so long ago where the presenter was looking at all of the options of AI in the whole survey process. And one of the options was making summaries of what you're doing, like transcripts, but also maybe some summaries of the reports, all the way to probing in questionnaires. So there would be some sort of probing going on for complex questions, for example. So it's maybe all still a bit future, but how do you look at this? Do you think that it will at some point come up also in the official statistical world?
I can imagine that for pre-testing, these will be really helpful. The automatic transcription, automatic summaries. Of course, you still need a human in the loop, but I think it can save us a lot of time. And also to do some piloting with AI probing questions. I mean, not for real survey data collection, but for evaluating questionnaires. These seem like very promising avenues, I think.
I would not be surprised if researchers, they would start build a questionnaire in some sort of tool, like a Copilot or ChatGPT, whatever tool. And that will be sort of the starting point. And then from that point on, you could sort of continue and see, okay, is that good enough? But I also think that some researchers would not even go that far. They would just accept it as it is. So you would still advocate a sort of a human in the loop, well, a questionnaire designer in the loop, in a way.
Yeah, absolutely.
That is absolutely necessary. And I think also maybe if you switch it around to give a good question on ChatGPT, you need prompting, and therefore cognitive interview techniques are very useful because you have to ask the right question and also the follow-up question. So in that is essential, I think, and that's related to the human loop because you have to probe correctly. And I think that maybe in the future, if the models are trained more, then the correct probes will be asked. But I think now I am a little bit skeptical.
And also for sensitive topics.
Yeah,
of course, you can do some brief automatic probing in a web questionnaire, and that can be really helpful and worthwhile. But if you are talking about really complex things or sensitive topics like crime, victimization, well, you name it. Then you also, if you really want to know how people feel about the questionnaire and about a certain topic, you need to talk to them, but at least via face-to-face via Zoom, at least. So they have to see your face, and if it's really sensitive topics, also to protect your respondents, you want to be there. Maybe want to have them in the lab so you know that they can speak in a private environment. And so for these type of things, you will still need to have a conversation from human to human and to really be listening and make
interact.
and also to motivate people to really share their ideas and experiences. And I don't think that will be so easy with AI yet. Yeah.
No, and I suspect that still we would not read the instructions. Even if it's a AI designed questionnaire, we will just go and see, okay. So I learned a lot from seeing you doing the test, but also how you talk about it. So I would like to thank you for doing this, for spending the time, and I wish you, of course, good luck with the HBS app.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Barry.
Thank you.
Well, that brings us to the end of this ESRA short movie on UI UX testing. I enjoyed it a lot and I learned a lot from observing how these tests are done and discussing with Deirdre and Vivian. I hope you liked it as well. Please look at other movies at europeansurveyresearch.org.